The graph depicts data on workplace safety. In the upper left corner, we can see a yellow safety helmet and orange goggles. We can make out some brown boots and gloves at the bottom of the image. In the upper right corner, we can see ear protection headphones and a face mask for protection. This is a good visual representation of how to dress appropriately for work while also utilizing personal protective equipment, PPE. The map image is labeled as HAD CM3 model, IPCC says a 2 scenario. It is pretty visible that most of the top or northern portion and some portion in the south of the continent is painted with grey, which means the lands here are not suitable for cereal growing. The middle portion of the map is marked with off-white color, showing that there is no or ignorable change in cereal production. The topmost portion and some portion in the south are of a red color, which means it'll have decreased output -50% of more. The green shades are scattered across the map, showing 5 to 25% increase. Overall, the map shows the mixed information on cereal output. Thoralby's total population is depicted in the graph below. The graph shows that in 1960, there were roughly 300 people, which is the highest number. According to the graph, the second largest number can be found in 1870, which is around 250. In 1950, there were about 100 people in the world, as can be seen from the graph. When we look at 1890, we can see that there were 200 people. Looking back to the year 2010, we notice that the total was 150. Thoralby's total population is depicted on the graph above. E-waste is depicted as a graph in this article. The graph shows that, when looking at electronic trash, DVD/VCR players, radios, and hi-fi sets, for example, account for roughly 15% of the total. According to the graph, the second largest percentage of electronic waste may be found in television, which accounts for roughly 10%. Figures from the graph clearly show that refrigerators use the least amount of electricity, accounting for about 20% of the total. As a result, we may conclude that the graph is really useful. The bar graph depicts the day-to-day fluctuations in the number of people using the London Underground. The station is rarely more than 100% full at any one time of day. At the station's busiest periods, which are 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., there are about 400 people. This isn't unexpected, given that these are the hours when most people are either on their way to work or have just arrived home from it. As a rule, the station is least congested between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. each day. 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, are peak hours for traffic. The data on the graph pertains to food in the future. The graph shows that by 2035, when looking at world wealth, the biggest number, 90, will be discovered. In 2005, the least number is roughly 45 people. According to the graph, we can clearly observe that in 2035, the highest number of EU citizens will be about 65. There were roughly 30 in 2005, when the lowest number was recorded. To summarize, this graph depicts data on global food consumption in nations like Japan, India, and China. The two-color vertical bar chart displays data on whether people retire at the appropriate age or retire too soon. The x-axis displays the years from 1998 to 2006, while the y-axis displays the number of retirements that occurred over those years, with figures ranging from 0 to 20,000. The graph clearly demonstrates an increasing pattern, with the length of the bar progressively increasing throughout the years depicted. In 1998, when over 5,000 persons retired, the majority of them behaved in accordance with their age rather than prematurely. As the years passed, both preterm and elderly persons expressed an equal desire to retire. Viruses assault cells to make new viruses in this process. When a virus enters a cell, it initially adheres to it during the adsorption stage. Replication occurs next, during which time the virus continues to create new proteins and acids. These amino acids and proteins are put together to create new viruses in the assembly step. Finally, the cell lets go of these new viruses. As a whole, a virus goes through a number of phases to replicate itself within a cell, from adsorption through release. The chemical transition is depicted in the following graph. The first phase, according to the diagram, is chemical sources, which are created by industry, transportation, or smelting, and electricity generation. Following that, the second step is about emissions, which means wastes will be emitted to the atmosphere amazing as nitrogen oxide and sulfur dioxide. Chemical transformation is the third phase, which converts the ingredients into nitric acid and sulfuric acid. After then, it is separated into two categories, condensation and dry fallout, which contains particles and gases. Finally, precipitation, acid rain, fog, snow, and mist will occur. Finally, this graph is quite useful. From 1970 to 2000, the graphics depict fitness membership data for men and women. Until the year 1980, the majority of fitness club members were males. If we compare the years 1985 and 1990, we can see that more women chose to join. Throughout the year 1995, men had a much greater membership percentage than women. Nonetheless, in the year 2000, the number of males who joined a fitness club was the lowest. In conclusion, for the time period studied, males were more health concerned than women. In 2000, the world's estimated illiteracy rates by area and gender are shown in the bar graph. Women in sub-Saharan Africa, Arab states and South Asia were the most illiterate, with illiteracy rates hovering just around 50% in each of these regions and as high as 55% in South Asia. They all came from South Asia, where the illiteracy rate was barely around 35%. In South Asia, both men and women were the most illiterate, whereas in industrialized nations, both men and women were the least illiterate. This map shows the locations of 3 weather radars around Australia. Almost all of Australia's weather radars are high-resolution Doppler radars, and these may be identified by their black diamonds. Those that share a blue square with wind finding are the most rare, and they are found largely in the north. While Doppler radars are the most frequent in Australia, those that are shared with wind findings are the least popular. In 2016, a bar graph shows the percentage of people who were unemployed and the amount of money they earned based on their educational attainment. Only 1.6% of those with PhD or professional degrees are employed. People with doctoral degrees and those with professional degrees had the greatest median weekly wages, at $1,664 and $1,745, respectively. The unemployment rate for those with less than a high school level is 7.4%, the highest in the country. Despite this, they have the lowest average annual incomes of $504. Doctoral and professional degree holders had the lowest unemployment rates and the highest median weekly wages. In contrast, those with a high school education or less are the most likely to be unemployed and receive the lowest median wage. From 2000 to 2005, this graph depicts data on the factors contributing to deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon. There can be no doubt about it from the graph that cattle grazing accounts for 65 to 70% of the workforce. Second only to large-scale farming is small-scale farming, which accounts for between 20 and 25% of the total. The graph clearly shows that the smallest percentage, 1 to 2%, may be found in other. Logging has a logging rate of 2 to 3%. Large-scale agriculture has a rate of 5 to 10% of the total. There are many reasons for deforestation, and this graph illustrates them. The image serves as a visual record of the experiment's results. Students and their teacher are doing an experiment on the blue desk in the photo, as can be seen. The experiment that one of the pupils is conducting appears to be being closely monitored by the teacher. In addition, we can see that all of the students are wearing protective eyewear for their own protection. To summarize, this image depicts the steps involved in doing a chemical experiment. Data about renewable energy sources may be seen in the graph. The graph clearly shows that heating and cooling has the highest percentage, at roughly 51%. The graph clearly shows that transportation, with a share of roughly 32%, has the second highest figure. According to the graph, the smallest percentage is in power, which is roughly 17%. As a whole, the graph is a wealth of knowledge. For the years 1991 and 2007, the pie charts compare owning vs renting. Home ownership was the most prevalent kind of housing in 1991, accounting for about 60% of all homes, or more than half of all dwellings. The second largest sector was social rental housing, which accounted for over 23% of all houses, or almost one-third. The other dwellings were primarily privately rented, 11%, with just a small percentage being public housing, 6%. In 2007, the number of homeowners had climbed to 70%, or nearly 3/4 of all residences, after 16 years. In comparison to 1991, this was a 10% rise. At 11%, the share of privately rented residences had remained steady. Despite the same proportion, there were 5 million more dwellings in 2007 than in 1991, hence the number of rental homes grew. The line graph depicts the percentage of people who commuted to work by bicycle in various cities between the years of 2000 and 2014. Portland had the greatest percentage of bicyclists, rising from 2% in 2000 to 7% in 2014. In 2000, Washington, D.C. had the lowest percentage of bike commuters at 1%, while in 2014, Seattle had the lowest rate at slightly under 4%. Over the years, Portland has consistently had the highest percentage of residents who commute by bicycle. From 1970 to 2000, the graphics depict fitness membership data for men and women. Until the year 1980, the majority of fitness club members were males. If we compare the years 1985 and 1990, we can see that more women chose to join. Throughout the year 1995, men had a much greater membership percentage than women. Nonetheless, in the year 2000, the number of males who joined a fitness club was the lowest. In conclusion, for the time period studied, males were more health concerned than women. The PDO index was used to evaluate Pacific climatic fluctuation between May and September of 1930 and 2010. From 1930 to 1940, the PDO reached a high of 13, indicating a warm regime. From 1950 to 1970, the PDO index fell to a low of -10, indicating a change to a cooler regime. Returned to a warmer regime between 1980 and 1990, with PDO climbing to 13. Overall, the PDO shifts between warm and cold regimes over time.